What's up, bitches?
Let's talk about crime.
What's up?
Morning.
Morning. Good morning.
Well, I guess it's like early afternoon.
It's like
Almost 11.
Almost 11, so it's still like morning. It's a Sunday morning. I know you're not hearing this on Sunday. You're hearing this on Tuesday, but it is a Sunday morning for us. And we had a breakfast, a nice little pancake breakfast. But that's, and we watched Mary Poppins. Anyways, yes. What are you just staring at me for?
I'm just waiting to get into what we're getting into.
Wow, you don't like to talk about nothing but the facts.
It's my day off and I'm tired of shit. So I'm still waking up and it's 11.
Wah, wah. Okay. Well, then we'll just go right into it. So today we are actually talking about Brian Dorsey. I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on this, but you got to listen to it in its entirety before. Obviously jump in when you feel like it, but don't tell me anything about your actual thoughts until the very end.
Roger Dodger.
Because I have mixed feelings on this. So what we are talking about today is on December 23rd, 2006, Brian Dorsey murders Sarah Bonney and Ben Bonney. Now this happens in New Bloomfield, Missouri. So that's kind of the basis of what we're talking about. But let's dig in a little bit. So first we're going to talk about just a smidgen about Ben and Sarah Bonney. I did not find out anything about them when they were younger. Actually, for anybody involved in this case, there's nothing really digging into like younger years background. But Ben and Sarah fell in love. They got married and they'd only been married for about a year when they were murdered. They did have a 4-year-old daughter. And really, there's just not a lot of information on either one of them. But from what I was able to kind of see is that Sarah was relatively close to her family and Ben was relatively close to his family. And they accepted each other's family. They got married. Clearly, they were together for a while before they got married because they have a 4-year-old daughter together. They really embraced family. That's pretty much the gist of it. Now, Brian Dorsey, on the other hand, again, not a lot of information about his younger years, but he was born to Larry and Patty Dorsey. And it was known throughout his childhood and teenage years that he had some mental health issues. In high school, he actually started binge drinking. And part of that, they have said, was because he also grew up in a home with an alcoholic father. So Larry was an alcoholic. Coupled with the fact that he had some mental health issues, my guess would be he started drinking a lot in high school. To be very fair, I drank a lot in high school too. And I didn't binge drink. I partied. So it could have just been that he was a typical high school partier, because that's a thing. Now, he did end up using alcohol and cocaine to self-medicate because he was dealing with some shit. And he actually is later diagnosed with a major depressive disorder. When you learn that he didn't know what he had, you can see where he might have become a regular drinker, become an alcoholic. And then on top of it, cocaine, regularly using cocaine to kind of take his mind off of his depressive disorder. So by the age of 19, he is a full-blown alcoholic and he has a regular drinking routine. So to me, when I read that, it makes me think that he was drinking, but he was a functioning alcoholic, meaning that most people probably didn't realize he was drinking as much as he was. And again, by the age of 19. So all throughout high school, you build up a tolerance for that and you can become a very functioning alcoholic. And that's kind of what it sounds like he was. He did try to seek help multiple times. He did go to inpatient and outpatient mental health and substance treatment programs, and nothing worked. So he would go in, get help, leave, start over. Go in, get help, leave, go back to his drinking and drugs. He also attempted suicide twice. It also doesn't help. that he attempts suicide. He's unsuccessful, obviously, both times. And so then that drives him to drink and do more things. So his first attempt was in 1992, and he was hospitalized in a psychiatric facility after it. And then he also attempted suicide again in 2004. And then he again is hospitalized after this attempt, which again, nothing's helping him. So he's been struggling since middle school. He is just, nothing's working. The only thing that helps him is alcohol and drugs. So as time goes on, he starts to go on these big cocaine binges. And these cocaine binges actually lead him to have episodes of extreme paranoia and really bizarre behavior, like talking nonsense in riddles. So he would do a bunch of cocaine and be extremely paranoid. He'd see people and he'd talk to them in weird fucking riddly type things that make no sense to anybody else, which is, I mean, people could obviously tell something wasn't quite right. There were even reports of him being so addicted to the drugs that when he would go through withdrawals, so when he was unable to have his drugs, he would actually have hallucinations. During all this time in his life, he tried really hard to keep his drug abuse a secret from his family. Which leads us to the night of December 23rd, 2006. Yes, the day before Christmas. So 2 drug dealers show up at Brian Dorsey's apartment. They are there to collect money from him because he's been doing their cocaine, and he's out of cocaine. He wants more. They want money. He doesn't have any. He's now going through withdrawals. He doesn't know what to do. So he calls his cousin, Sarah Bonnie, and he asks her for money. He tells her there's these drug dealers here. So again, already he's now having to admit to somebody in his family that he is doing drugs. So he calls his cousin, who he loves dearly. She loves him dearly, whatever. And he's like, can I have some money? I have these drug dealers at my house. They won't leave. They're telling me that if they don't get the money, they're going to kill me. And she's like, no, I'm not going to give you money, but let Ben and I come get you. We're going to come to your house. We're going to come get you. We'll bring you to our house. Keep you safe. And he's like, fine. So Ben and Sarah head over to Brian's house. By the time they get there, the drug dealers have left. So they get there. He's there by himself. They tell him like, come on, come back to our house with us. We're going to take care of you. And he's like, okay, fine. So he ends up spending the rest of the night hanging out with his cousin, Sarah, her husband, Ben. Ben's families and friends were also there. They were drinking. They were playing pool, just kind of hanging out. Now, once everybody has gone and left, Brian, I don't know why I keep forgetting his name. Brian is staying the night there. Everybody gets ready for bed. Well, he ends up going into their garage and he grabs the shotgun that's in their garage. And he goes up into their bedroom and he shoots both Sarah and Ben at close range, killing them both. Now, it is reported, and I'm only saying it because it was reported in multiple sources, that he also then raped Sarah's body, which his lawyers did try to dispute because he was never actually charged with any sort of crime related to sex abuse or rape. However, you'll find out later why they feel that he did this. Now, Dorsey then locks the bedroom door. He steals several items from their home. He steals Sarah's car and he drives around trying to sell all the different items that he stole to try and get money that he needed to pay back the drug dealers. So now the following day, Ben, Sarah, and their 4-year-old daughter had not shown up for the Christmas Eve morning celebrations at Sarah's family's house. Now, at first, it was thought that they were just late because Ben had a tendency to be late, like always. They never showed up to anything on time. But it gets like a lot later. I think they were supposed to be there at like 11. And it's like, here we are like in the mid-afternoon and they still haven't shown up. They tried calling. Nobody answers the phone. So Sarah's parents end up going, you know, we're just going to go check on them because yeah, they're late to everything, but this is like abnormally late. And so they show up to the house and they knock on the door. Nobody answers. They open the door. The door's unlocked. They go inside and they find that their 4-year-old granddaughter is sitting watching TV. And she tells them that mommy won't wake up. Now, again, the door upstairs is locked. So I'm sure she's probably knocked on her parents' door and she just thinks they're sleeping. So she, as a 4-year-old, as most 4-year-olds would do, I mean, you did when you were 4. If we were too tired, you would go turn on the TV and sometimes, I mean, you'd have a snack and you'd sit there and watch TV. So in her mind, she's probably just like, oh, they're just sleeping. So Sarah's father ends up going out into the garage and grabbing some tools and he picks the lock on the master bedroom door. And when he opens the door, he finds his daughter, Sarah, and his son-in-law, Ben, both in bed, both dead, both shot. The master bedroom was in complete disarray. And it is found out later that bleach had been poured on Sarah's body. Now, there was a sexual assault kit administered to Sarah, and they found that she had been the previous night, she had been around 3 men that previous night. Now, what they did was they literally took DNA from these 3 people, and the kit eliminated 2 of the 3 men. It did not eliminate Brian Dorsey, and there were sperm cells found inside of her body. So clearly that's why even though his lawyers are like, he was never charged with any sex-related crime, but his sperm was found inside of her body. So obviously something happened there. So now Ben Bonnie's family now is also worried about the family members because again, his brother has been trying to call him because again, it's Christmas Eve. So they're trying to figure out, who's going where at what time, and they can't get a hold of them. And so finally Ben's sister-in-law and his dad, they went to the house to find out like, where the hell are they? Like, what are they doing? Well, when they got there, by this time, the cops had already been called. So they saw cop cars all around, and they find out what had happened. So they talk to the police. They tell them. So now Ben's brother continues. He's like trying to now call his wife and being like, so like, are they there? They're not answering because they don't even know what to do. So they go back to the house, and Ben's older brother is told by his wife about the death of his brother, and Ben's mother is told about their deaths by her husband. And immediately all the family members are contacted. So basically, as soon as people find out that they've both passed away, they are on the phone calling everybody. Well, they cannot get a hold of Brian Dorsey. People, especially Ben's family, they knew that Brian Dorsey had been at their house the night before because they were there too. So they were all like, a bunch of them were hanging out. And so they keep trying to get a hold of him because they're kind of like, well, okay, first of all, he was there. He was there when we left. He wasn't there now. They're dead. Like, I don't understand. So his family, because again, Sarah and Brian are cousins. Sarah's family basically goes to Brian's family and is like, hey, can you get a hold of Brian? Because he was at Sarah's house last night. We don't know where he is. Sarah and Ben are shot in the head, killed. Like, we need to figure out what's going on. So they call him. He does not answer. So his parents actually think that he has committed suicide because he had previously tried. As a matter of fact, this is only 2 years after his other suicide attempt. So his mom and dad are kind of like, we can't get a hold of him, and now we're thinking he might have committed suicide. They didn't know if he had anything to do with the murders in particular, but they were concerned about the fact that he was nowhere to be found and that he had been at Bonnie's the night before. So I'm thinking his parents might have thought, is there a chance he did this and then he went and killed himself? That's probably because they knew he had some mental health issues. So at 11 p.m. on Christmas Day, so this is now basically 2 days after, because they were killed at night, early morning on December 23rd or early morning December 24th. This is now Christmas Day at night. Brian Dorsey calls his mom and tells her that he is going to kill himself. And she starts talking to him about Sarah and Ben. She's trying to find out what's going on, why he wants to kill himself. And he says, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't remember killing them. Like, I have no memory of this. So I don't know what to tell you. But honestly, to me, I'm sitting here going, well, he had to know something, because why would he just all of a sudden want to kill himself? Like, that to me, maybe he doesn't remember actually killing them, but he must have known that they were murdered somehow, some way.
Or maybe he doesn't remember murdering them, but he knows that something had happened.
Right. Like, maybe he has, like, I hear people say when they're going through like a drug-induced like psychosis, that they have flashes of memories. And so maybe that's him. Maybe in his mind, maybe he can see them in his brain like dead, but he doesn't know or doesn't remember actually doing it. And then again, he disappears for like 2 days and then wants to kill himself. To me, that's always been kind of suspect, but whatever. Now, his mom ends up talking to him, and she ends up telling him, like, no, don't kill yourself. Let's see what we can do here. Why don't you go to the police? Why don't we bring you to the police and let's see if we can figure this out? So he does actually take his mom's advice, and he ends up going to the police and telling them. He literally walks in and he's like, I'm the right guy. Like, I did this. Okay. So he turns himself in. He has never denied committing the murders. He does not say, he claims that he doesn't remember doing it, but he's never actually said, I did not kill them. He just says, I don't remember killing them, but he's never said I didn't do it, which again makes me think he probably has some flashes of like, shit, did I do this? So Brian Dorsey is arrested and he is charged with 2 counts of murder. He is then at that point persuaded by his lawyers to plead guilty to first-degree murder. His lawyers did not even argue that he should like, like normally when you're like, hey, plead guilty, there's some sort of incentive, right?
There's typically like a deal or something.
Right. It's not necessarily like, oh, whatever, plead. It's normally like, okay, how about you plead to first-degree murder, but we'll make it to where you can't have the death penalty. That's typically right. Death penalty's off the table if he pleads guilty. You don't have to go to trial. You don't have to prove anything. He's just going to accept responsibility. They didn't even argue that. Okay. They literally were like, yeah, I think you should just plead guilty.
Which makes me wonder though, if there's so many, well, first of all, you might have just had a shitty lawyer, but it makes me wonder if there was so many like facts against him when they knew like kind of what they had to put him in jail or give him the death penalty, that they were probably like, there's literally no way for us to argue this shit.
There is a little bit more on that. It's in a moment. In a moment, we'll dig into the why he pled guilty. So anyway, so he does. He pleads guilty. So because he pleads guilty, then you get sentenced. He pleads guilty for both murders, and they sentence him to death. Okay, so he pleads guilty, walks in, says I don't do it, doesn't go to trial, and the judge is like, you're set to die now. Okay. Now, he did admit that prior to the murders, he had actually stayed up for 2 to 3 days. He had been smoking crack cocaine and he had ran out of money to buy more. And during that time, he had actually called at least 3 family members looking for more money without disclosing to them why he needed more money. So he's clearly on like a cocaine binge, right? So that's that. That's Brian Dorsey. That's like the entirety of his case. There's nothing like secretive about it, right? He does this, boom, he admits it, right? So we're going to talk about currently because he is, this was in 2006. Since his original conviction, he has actually appealed multiple times. And he's not appealing to get out of jail. He is appealing to commute to a life sentence, to not have death penalty. Each time he has appealed, he has lost.
This is going to sound rude, but that's so funny for somebody that's committed suicide
right.
twice.
Right. But I think there's a difference between committing suicide, taking your own life versus having somebody else inject you.
Yeah.
And take your life
for you.
Yeah. Now, the most recent thing that has happened is they actually filed what's called a clemency petition. Now, this is not an appeal. This is when you go to the governor of your state. So this is Missouri. When you go to the governor of Missouri and says, listen, here's a bunch of information about this person. We are asking for clemency. Clemency means that you can commute him to a life sentence. You can take him off death row. Here's all the reasons why, right? So this is, and you have a bunch of people sign and all this stuff. One of the things that they, in their appeals, and they use this for their clemency petition as well, is the claim that he had 2 lawyers. So in his original conviction, he had 2 lawyers. They were public defenders. Now, at that time in 2006, the way that public defenders in Missouri were paid is they got paid a flat fee. Each of his lawyers was paid $12,000 for the case. However, that sounds like a lot of money, but for a capital punishment case, it typically takes like 3 to 5 years to fight it. And they would have only made $12,000. Their argument is that his lawyers did not want to even try to pursue a case because they only made $12,000.
I mean, I would have done the same thing.
Right. I would
have been like, what's going to be the fastest way to get this case done so I can get another one?
Exactly. And so they're saying he was basically not given good legal advice and he wasn't represented well due to the fact that these lawyers were paid so shittily for something that should have, and this is not the first time. These 2 lawyers actually, there was another person that they did the same thing to, and they got paid $10,000 for this guy's case. And his case, they talked to lawyers afterwards and they said it would have been a 5-year case. Well, you can't pay somebody $10,000 for 5 years of work.
No, if it was $10,000,
it's supposed to be hourly. Like lawyers typically get paid hourly, right? Which is why if you have a good lawyer, they charge a lot because they charge a lot for their time, but they do their due diligence. These 2 guys are public defenders who are like, okay, so I just got $12,000 to represent this guy who clearly killed his cousin and his cousin's husband he's not saying he didn't do it, then just fucking sign guilty and move on. But they could have at least fought for no death penalty, in my honest opinion.
Right.
They didn't do shit. So that has been the appeal. Well, a lot of the times they said that, or the judges that they would bring these to are like, okay, yeah, I can see where we're going, but he still is guilty. I mean, you ask him, he's guilty. He wasn't wrongfully, defended or whatever. So that was part of it. Now, his current lawyers, so he has current lawyers now, they are dealing with, or they're saying that he is not eligible for first degree capital murder because he was in a drug-induced psychosis at the time of the murders, which legally would make him not able to be charged with first degree murder. I don't know what Missouri's first degree murder laws are, but I know some states first degree murder it has to be like pre-planned, and it has to be like that's like a big chunk of it, or like premeditated. I know that sometimes it's like in some states you can't do first degree murder unless there's a robbery involved. Like it's very weird. So I don't know what their rules is. Obviously, if you're intoxicated in any sort of way, or if you have some sort of psychosis, drug-induced psychosis, that automatically makes you ineligible for first degree murder. If you are not eligible for first degree murder, then that takes the death penalty off the table. So their argument is he should have never been found guilty of first degree murder, therefore he should not be on death row. They also had said that his previous lawyers didn't even ask him the basic questions about himself. And they said the reason that's important is because if they would have talked to him about himself and his past, it would have opened up his past drug use, his mental health issues, his suicide attempts, which would have given him a defense to not be charged for first degree murder.
Right.
And even if he pled guilty, to plead guilty to either first degree murder with no death penalty or second degree murder.
I would say having like a deal.
It would be a better fight for him. So now his previous lawyers also never brought up the idea that he may have been in a drug-induced psychosis. They never even brought that up. They never even brought up drug abuse at all. So they basically literally got this case and they were like, yeah, we hear what you did. You're saying you don't remember doing it, but you're not saying you didn't do it. So just sign this paper. We're going to say that you're guilty. It's the easiest way to do it. Boom. And then he does, and he gets the death penalty. Now, only thing that I'm confused about, okay, this is something I'm confused about, is that in the court records, it actually stated that he had been coming down off of drugs. And he had been heavily drinking and was experiencing an extreme level of intoxication. He was unable to purchase drugs at the time because he had no money. And he was actually going through withdrawals. So he wasn't in a drug-induced psychosis because he wasn't high on drugs. Okay, so his lawyers are saying he was in a drug-induced psychosis, but all of the information that leads, what they've presented in court, what they've talked about, he had not been on. He was on drugs prior, but he was going through a withdrawal phase. There's still a stance here because he would routinely suffer auditory and visual hallucinations when he was withdrawing from drugs. So I think the better defense would be that he was going through a severe withdrawal with hallucinations. That's what I think. I don't think he was in a drug-induced psychosis. But either way, I think both of those would take first-degree murder off the table for him. So my thought is, even if he's having hallucinations, or if he was having hallucinations, this could actually explain what happened at his cousin's house. If he kills a cousin who he loves dearly, there is obviously he's not right in his head when he does this. So, because he's not like outside of drugs and alcohol, he's not like a bad person. He was always like a family person. So to me, it makes more sense that he would have been hallucinating something than he would have a psychosis.
Well, and it's not like he got mad when she said,
Right.
No, we're not going to give you money. Like,
No.
if anything, we're going to give you a place to stay to
Yeah.
protect you. And he
Yeah.
was like, great. Like,
Yep.
that's awesome. Like,
Yeah.
that's the thing that kind of sucks for
It totally sucks.
him.
It's
well, and
off,
them,
and
obviously,
it's for all of
but-
them. So either way, the claim is that he was not himself during the murders and that he should not have received capital punishment. During his clemency petition, again, petitions, people go to the governor, bring him a bunch of information and bring him like a paper that's signed by all these different people who say you should probably take the death penalty off this guy, take him off of death row. He had more than 70 corrections officers sign the petition to commute him to a life sentence. More than 70
Damn,
corrections
that's a lot.
officers. Yeah. Their reasons were he was a model prisoner. He did not have any infractions ever since 2006. So this was in 2024. Okay, what I'm talking about. So in 2006 to 2024, 17, 18 years. He did not have one single infraction. And the corrections officer said, that's nearly impossible because he was in a maximum security prison, which maximum security prisons hold the worst of the worst people. And they always have people fighting in this. And they said he's never done anything at all that would cause him to be in trouble. He also, the warden, his former warden of the prison that he's in, also signed the petition and said, Brian Dorsey is a different person. Okay. And he has a job as a barber in the prison. And the warden said, I trusted him enough that he cut my hair every couple weeks. One of the officers actually wrote, the Brian I have known for years would not hurt anyone. The Brian I know does not deserve to be executed. These are the fucking corrections officers that worked with him. Okay. So like legit, these people, all of these people are fighting for him to stay alive. Now, he also had support from some of his family members. He had a cousin that wrote a letter explaining why she thought that he should be commuted to a life sentence. She wrote I love him and I don't want to see him be killed. I wish someone, a decision maker, could see Brian for who he is when not on drugs. He is that person today. She also said, Brian was convicted of a terrible crime. We have never denied that, but Brian is not the worst of the worst. And a single terrible night in his life does not justify killing him. When the correction...
Yeah, especially because there's also fucking like serial killers and shit out there that get caught and they don't fucking get the death. Like,
right.
I'm not saying what he did was okay at all.
No, of
but
course not.
I just feel like I also
now you're starting to see why I have mixed emotions.
Like I would say, I kind
of
like agree that like, yeah, I mean, obviously you got to get in trouble for what you did, but I don't think you should be sentenced to death for this shit. Like,
she also said when the correctional officers sent the letter to the governor supporting him being commuted to a life sentence, I felt so validated because I cannot reconcile this crime with the one that he's convicted for. Meaning she's saying what he did was fucking atrocious. But the person who killed those two people is not the person you're putting to death. The person you're putting to death is this guy who made a really fucking awful decision. And it was really, truly probably because of drugs or withdrawing from drugs. And it was something that he for his entire life will have to live with. But he shouldn't be put to death because of something like that when everybody who sees him on a daily basis says, I don't want to kill this guy. One of the corrections officers had actually said, I'm totally for the death penalty. He's not the guy that we put on this isn't the guy we put on death row. I deal with death row inmates all the time. And Brian Dorsey is not a death row inmate. He doesn't deserve to be on death row. Okay. So when you have all these people that are like, save this man, just let him live his life in prison, please. So a former Supreme Court judge also wrote a statement claiming that the flat fee service that was given to his original lawyers undoubtedly had an impact on the representation he received. So all these things come to the governor, and the governor of Missouri says, no, you're still going to die. Okay. So on April 9th, 2024, Brian Dorsey is 52 and he is executed by lethal injection. Now, before the actual execution, there was concern about if it would work or not because Brian Dorsey was a diabetic and a former IV drug user. And the thought was that he's supposed to be doing lethal injection. Well, they were worried that they wouldn't be able to find a suitable vein to put the not the incision, the
IV.
IV. Thank you. So they were worried about this. Check this out. They said, if we can't find a suitable vein, there is a procedure that we can do, and it's called an invasive cut down procedure. And what they do is they make an incision in the skin and they use forceps to pull the muscle tissues away from the vein so that they basically have it open. And it's extremely painful, and they only use a local anesthetic. And so he had lawyers and shit that were like,
I work in vet med and I'm telling you right now, that shit, no.
So his lawyers were like, if that's the only way you can do it, that has to be grounds for him to not be lethally injected. Because one of the biggest things about lethal injection is it's supposed to be one of the most humane ways to kill somebody, because you put them on a gurney, you inject them with, sometimes it's 2 doses. One, like in the state of Missouri, they use a single dose, and the single dose has a sedative, and then it has the thing that kills you. So literally you put them to sleep and then they stop breathing. It's supposed to be the most humane way. Electric chair really isn't used that much anymore. That's not humane at all. Hanging is also not humane. I mean, you die rather quickly, but you're standing in the gallows. Like, that's scary. And then we also do have gas chamber, which to me, gas chamber, it has to be brutal. I don't know, but I just feel like you sit in a room.
Okay, I feel like gas chamber shouldn't even be a thing since, I don't know, the fucking Holocaust.
Thank you. You know who has gas chamber? They don't even actually allow people to die right now on death row because of Newsom, but California uses the gas chamber, which I'm like, to me, my brain, I'm just like, what? And then in other states, like I know, not Ohio. Is it Ohio? Yeah, Ohio. Was it Ohio? No, Utah. Utah actually has firing squad too. Now, Utah's firing squad, though, is part of the reason they have it is because they're a very high Mormon population. And apparently in the Mormon religion, if you do bad stuff in your life, if you want repentance and forgiveness, if you shed your own blood before you pass away, that is supposed to help you get to where you're going. So that's why they have the firing squad. But in my brain, I'm like, I can't. That just seems like, listen, I'm all for capital punishment, but having me stand there with like multiple people shooting you, not fucking humane. Standing there or sitting in a room where it fills with gas and you basically, I'm assuming you suffocate, not fucking cool. Electric chair, totally not cool because you're electrified to death. Hanging, not in my mind, mentally just totally fucks you. You're standing there with a noose around your neck and then you just like, you're standing on this platform.
Some of these motherfuckers out there deserve the worst.
I get it. I get it. But I'm just saying, like, that's some crazy shit. So they fought that and they said, if that's the only way you can put him to death, we're going to fight and we're going to, there's no way. That's not humane. It didn't happen. They had, their staff came in, like their medical staff came in and they looked him over. They looked at his arms and they were like, no, okay, yes, he was a heavy drug user, but not that heavy of a drug user. Like we can absolutely, do this. So he had exhausted all of his options and he was pronounced dead at 6:11 p.m. So they did this in like the evening. Normally it's like at midnight or some shit. Now he received a single dose injection of the sedative. You might know the name. I'm going to butcher the shit out. Pentobarbital. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what they use. What is it? Do you guys use it?
Yep.
Oh shit. Is that what you use to put the dogs down?
I mean, I think if any of my coworkers listen, don't fucking judge me. But I think it's like, I want to say it's like pentobarbital sodium something, I think is what we use. But yeah, I think it's essentially the same fucking thing.
Oh, jeez. That's what you do to put dogs down or animals down, right?
Yeah. So essentially they euthanized him.
Yeah. That's basically, I mean, lethal injection. Yeah.
Which would make, like, honestly, it would make sense because that's how we do it in vet med. And if I'm being honest, I know dogs and cats are different than like humans, but they're not also at the same time. So I feel like it would make sense that is what you use.
Well, and again, the single dose also has a sedative in it. So a sedative would put him to sleep, right? Basically put him to sleep and then stop his heart is basically what they're doing. Now, like I said, some states do multiples. So kind of like I know at your work for euthanasias, you guys do multiple injections, right? Because you do one to get them like relaxed or one to put them to sleep and then one to actually, right? Is kind of how you do it.
Yeah, so we place IVs and then when the owners are ready for things like that to happen, we at our hospital use propofol, which is a sedation agent that basically puts them to sleep, but not like stops their heart. It just sedates them super heavily to where they're basically taking a big ass nap.
Yeah.
And then when we ask the owners if they're ready, which it's typically like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
That's when we give the euthanasia solution. And then that's when the doctors have to listen to their heart to make sure that their heart's no longer working.
Some lethal injection states, they do it that way. They will do one, which will make them fall asleep. And then they do a second dose, which stops their heart.
Because I think you don't have to do, at least in vet med, I'm pretty sure you don't have to do like the propofol solution.
It just seems like nice.
Well, first of all, I think it's painful. I think the injection is a little bit painful. But on top of that, it's not fun. I've had it happen at least one time. It's not fun when you can't use a sedation agent. The process is a lot more, in my opinion, it's more traumatizing.
I would assume.
So
I would assume. Okay. So yes. So he has a single dose injection. Now, during his time, he actually takes a few very deep breaths. Then he took a few shallow breaths. He lifts his head up. He blinks really hard, puts his head back down. And then a few seconds later, all of his movement stopped and he is pronounced dead. So and actually the person, one of the medical people that were in, because the room that they're in is soundproof. So nobody can hear anything going on inside. So you can watch, like they'll have areas where you can watch somebody being put to death, but you can't hear him. And he did have a spiritual, I forgot what they call him, like a spiritual guide or whatever, spiritual advisor in the room with him. And the spiritual advisor, he had actually been meeting with prior to his death anyways. So that person was in there. All the medical people were in there. The spiritual advisor was speaking. You could see the spiritual advisor speaking, but you couldn't hear what the spiritual advisor was saying. My guess is it's a prayer because I grew up Catholic. So that's typically what happens. The medical people came out and said it was very smooth. It was a very smooth process, very by the book. That's typically what they do. There was, and it was relatively short. He did have final words that he had pre-written down. So because again, he's in this room that's soundproof. So when you're doing it that way, he had to write it down. So his final words were, "To all of the family and loved ones I share with Sarah, and to all of the surviving family and loved ones of Ben, I am truly, deeply, and overwhelmingly sorry. Words cannot hold the just weight of my guilt and shame. I still love you. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I am sorry I hurt them and you. To my family, friends, and all of those that tried to prevent this, I love you. I am grateful for you. I have peace in my heart, in large part because of you, and I thank you. To those on all sides of this sentence, I carry no ill will or anger, only acceptance and understanding." Okay, so those are his, which again, I'm very mixed on this. His last meal was served to him at 11 a.m. because again, he died in the evening. He ordered 2 double bacon cheeseburgers, 2 orders of chicken strips, 2 large orders of fries, a pizza topped with sausage, pepperoni, onion, mushrooms, and extra cheese. That's the way to do it.
That just fucking hurts my stomach if I'm being honest.
Yeah, but I mean, for real, I'm assuming he just ordered all of his most favorite things. 2 of everything.
We all know what mine would be.
We know. Broccoli, fettuccine, Alfredo. He also spent a half an hour with his spiritual advisor before, like by himself. All this said, not everybody was unhappy to see him executed. So there was a boatload of people that were really excited or really, really pushing for him to live. He actually also had over 80 protesters outside of his execution protesting that he should not be put to death. There's always protesters, but 80 is quite a bit. Plus he had his
especially because it's probably, I mean, it's Missouri. It's not like it's
right.
fucking LA.
Well, and he had 70 plus corrections officers rooting for him to have his sentence overturned. He had an ex-warden, an ex-Supreme Court judge, family members. Okay, right. Jacob Bonney, who is Ben's brother, describes Dorsey as a monster. And he says the punishment fits the crime. He also said, "I believe in the death penalty and I think he deserves it." And Sarah Bonney's family also was happy with his execution. They actually said that it was a light at the end of the tunnel for them. They're taught their reference. So right now, so they said referencing their 4-year-old daughter, because Sarah Bonney's family has taken in their 4-year-old daughter. And they said, "We think of all the things that she has missed out on during her life without her parents. First day of school, school parties, school dances, first dates, sweet 16, first boyfriend, high school graduation. All of this was taken from her by a family member that proclaimed to love her." Okay. They also said that he was a close family member who was given a safe haven to get him out of a bad situation and turned this helping hand into the ultimate betrayal of a loved one. They are happy.
See, but I also understand their side of it because it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, it's not, I don't mean this lightly, but like shit happens type of situation.
Right.
But it's also one of those things where she did literally open her door and her arms to him to have him have a safe space. But on top of that, he went through different rehab facilities and therapy and, all the things that you were talking about, and they didn't stick. But also I sit here and go, but did you actually try afterwards? So, and I've never been to like rehab or anything like that, but like I'm in therapy.
Yeah, but there's a big difference between like, especially people who self-medicate for especially mental health, it is really, really fucking difficult to break them of that. And why? Because all the therapy in the world, therapy, as you know yourself, it is hard as shit. It is hard as shit. And if you're somebody who goes into therapy, goes into a psych facility, and you're golden for 30 days and they let you out and you start getting back into the real world, and then all of a sudden it's like, wow, this is way harder than I thought. You're not typically going to go, well, let me go back to my therapeutic roots and figure out how to work through this. You're going to go, well, I know that if I take this or if I go and get some Coke, all my shit's going to go away.
Well, and it sounds like, too, he didn't have a very strong support system.
Well, his father was
just
an alcoholic.
His parents alone.
Right. And so there is that other part where it's like, not everybody, I always have like a weird soft spot for drug addicts. And I was not a drug addict, so it's not because of that. When I was in school for psychology, I was actually thinking about specializing in drug rehabilitation. Was one of the things I had looked into with with a master's, is to get a master's degree in couples counseling or like family counseling with a emphasis in drug counseling, because most people in this world don't wake up in the morning and go, I need to get high today to function. And the people who do, it's normally there's an underlying reason. Like addiction is a real thing. And people who have addictions to drugs in particular, a lot of the times it's because that's their coping with something in their life. They might not even know that they had something in their life happen. It might be something that's blocked out. But there is typically, most people who have been addicted to drugs, there's a reason they started it. It's not because they woke up one day and said, I'd like to know what it's like to be high. Even though growing up in the 80s and 90s, DARE would have you believe that you're going to try drugs just because you want to. I can testify and say that's just not how it works. Most people try drugs because they've been told it feels so good, you can escape reality. Well, most people aren't looking for an escape from reality, but people who are suffering from either a mental illness or a traumatic event in their life, they're looking to escape reality. That's the whole reason why people start drugs. And so that is one of those things that it's like, my heart hurts for them. And then you have the other side where the people become addicted to prescription pills because they were put on prescriptions by their doctors for pain or whatever. And with those people, when you're put on a prescription drug and you feel really good, when you're not on those prescription drugs, you feel shitty. You're going to go back to those prescription drugs. So it's a slippery slope. It is. And so for him, I would never, if any of you know me outside of this, you all know how I am. I would never, ever, ever say, oh, I don't think this person deserves the death penalty. But I would say that with this guy, because in my honest opinion, and I apologize to anybody who feels differently, but this is my opinion, everybody in life deserves a second chance. They just do. One bad decision should not change the whole direction of your life forever. You should always be able to redeem yourself or make amends. And by putting him to death, you did not allow him to make amends with his one bad decision.
See, and for me, it's not even that. For me, it's, I know that there are people that are out there that are worse.
Absolutely.
Or whether they already are, dealing with sentencing, or whether it was like shit from like the 90s and the 80s. Like, I know past, present, and I'm sure future, there's going to be people that are way fucking worse than what this guy did.
Yep.
And they're going to get
how many people
not as worse of a punishment.
How many people have I talked about on Fatal Blend that are serial killers
That's
that are
my point.
Still sitting on death row?
That's my point.
And have not been put to death. And they've killed multiple people and they want to kill people.
Or they've done crimes that are fucking worse than this.
Right. This guy, the thing with this guy is, from everything I see, and I think I would feel differently if it was just his family saying like, no, he's a good guy, but it's not. You're being told by 70 plus corrections officers who have dealt with him over the last 17 years, this guy does not deserve to be put to death. When people who work in the field of dealing with death row criminals and they're telling you this guy's not him, I would trust that. When the former warden is saying, no, like, you guys have it wrong. Yes, he did something terrible. Yes, he should be in prison forever.
Yeah, nobody was saying no, he shouldn't have a punishment of some sort.
Nobody said
they
let
were
him
just
out.
saying executing him and having his life basically be taken away from him.
Right.
Is not the right move.
Not the right move
in the sense of
for this
with his situation,
because this situation didn't warrant for that.
No.
The other thing was, I will say, somebody had said that so as he was waiting and doing all his appeals and stuff, and he's in jail, he limited which family members could come see him, and the reason for that was because he didn't want family members to get close to him in case he was going to die. Again, doesn't sound like a terrible fucking person. It sounds like somebody who did a really fucking terrible thing. And again, I don't normally I'm like, eye for an eye, bitch. This is a different scenario because it was very much not, I don't think that he was in the right frame of mind. I would definitely believe he was in some sort of psychosis or hallucination. And he had zero, other than drugs and alcohol, he had never hurt anybody before. So we're not talking about a career criminal who's trying to fucking kill people. We're talking about a man who took the life of two people and then wanted to kill himself because of it. And so it's like, this is somebody who, when you listen to the things that they say about him, and even some of the corrections officers said that he would, every single day that he was in prison for the 17 years, he would be trying to make amends with what he did because he couldn't let go of the guilt. That's what you're supposed to do. And if you really wanted if the Bonnie family really wanted to make him suffer, you would have let him live, because he'd have to live the rest of his life with that guilt, right? Like, he'd have to live the rest of his life knowing that he took somebody's life.
The thoughts of wanting to kill himself,
of course.
And more than likely not to. I mean, I know it can happen in jail. I understand that, but the likelihood of it happening is not as high.
No. And I will say this final thing, and then we can go. I would never advocate for him to have gotten out of jail, though. I want to make it very clear. I'm not saying he should have been let out of jail.
You still did a shitty thing. Like, you still deserve a punishment of some sort. He
should have. I don't think in this scenario, which shocked me to the fucking core when I did the research on this, and I felt so strongly about it. I'm very mixed. I can see both sides. But to pick a side, I would pick that I agree he probably should not have been put to death, which is, I never thought I'd say that about any case ever, because normally I'm like, yep, kill them all. This case is different. It hits fucking different. I'm not saying he should have been let out of jail. As a matter of fact, I think he should have been left in prison for the rest of his life because he still did something awful. But I do think that he should have been given the opportunity to live his life in prison and try to make amends with the people that he felt he needed to make amends with. That's not what happened. But at the end of the day, no, I don't think he should have ever been commuted to, like, get out of prison, because I do think that if he would have gone out of prison, he probably would have gone back to drugs and could have done it again. So I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I think this is one of the few, this is the first time ever that I can honestly say, doing research on any sort of true crime, anything, that I felt it was not a justified death sentence, which is fucking bizarre. Because I think that he lacked representation. And I think had he had better representation, he'd be alive. That's just my personal thoughts. Anyways, so that is the story of Brian Dorsey. I now know your opinion. You're on the same page as I am, which honestly kind of shocked me. I thought you would be like, nah, fuck it, kill him. But it just kind of it's
the therapy side of me. Let's be honest.
It's the turning over a new leaf side.
Yeah, for real.
It just, again, in my mind, everybody deserves a second chance regardless. Well,
no,
I can't even say that as a blanket statement, because there are people in this world that
it's totally circumstantial.
There you go. It's circumstantial. In this circumstance, I believe he deserved a second chance because he did not, in my honest opinion, he did not go and kill his cousin and her husband because he wanted to. I mean, he wanted to in the moment, but it wasn't him thinking about it. He was taken over by some sort of psychosis or hallucinations or something like that. You still have the punishment, but I don't think death was it. That's all it is. So thanks for joining us for episode 4. Don't forget to follow us on all of our different platforms. Instagram is Crime Bitches Podcast. X is Crime Bitches Podcast. And that's all we got for you for right now. Until next time, see you on the flip side.
Bye.